The lecture hall smelled like recycled air and coffee. Students filed into their seats while Professor Rollin adjusted the holographic display at the front of the room. His green skin caught the afternoon light streaming through the windows, making him look almost luminescent. The Verdantian stood nearly 7 feet tall, with long limbs and a frame that suggested he had never lifted anything heavier than a datapad. Cassie slid into her usual seat in the third row, dropping her bag beside her chair. She had been looking forward to xenobiology all semester, but 3 weeks in, the excitement had started to fade. Rollin was brilliant, no question about that. His research papers were cited across the galaxy, but he had a way of talking that made her teeth hurt. Today we examine the dietary evolution of sapient species, Rollin announced, his voice carrying easily across the room. Specifically, why certain evolutionary paths lead to advancement while others remain mired in primitive behaviors. The hologram shifted to show a diagram of digestive systems. Rollin gestured at a simplified human stomach and intestinal tract, highlighted in red. The omnivorous digestive system, he continued, represents an evolutionary compromise, neither fully adapted to plant matter nor to flesh consumption. These species attempt to process both with mediocre efficiency. Humanity, as you are aware, falls into this category. Cassie felt several students shift in their seats. About 60% of the class was human. The rest were exchange students from various coalition worlds. Rollin pulled up another diagram, this one showing the Verdantian digestive system in green. By contrast, specialized herbivores like my own species developed sophisticated cellular breakdown mechanisms. We extract maximum nutrition from plant matter through a multi-stage process that your simple systems cannot replicate. A student near the back raised his hand. Rollin nodded at him. Professor, humans have been successful as a species. We've colonized dozens of worlds and contributed significantly to coalition technology. Does diet really matter if the outcome is the same? Rollin smiled, but there was no warmth in it. An excellent question. Success, however, must be measured against potential. Yes, humanity has achieved much despite your dietary limitations. Imagine what you might have accomplished with a more efficient biological foundation. Cassie bit her tongue. She had learned quickly that arguing with Rollin went nowhere. He would simply bury you in research citations and smugly declare victory. The consumption of animal flesh, Rollin went on, requires enormous resource expenditure. You must raise livestock, process meat, maintain cold storage, monitor for pathogens. A herbivorous species eliminates these inefficiencies entirely. This is why 12 of the 15 major galactic civilizations evolved from herbivorous stock. He pulled up images of various alien species, all of them plant-eaters. The Verdantians, the Quillians, the Harmony Collective. We represent the pinnacle of dietary evolution. We took the efficient path. And the other three, someone asked. Outliers, Rollin said dismissively. Humanity, the creche, and the talents. 2 of whom are barely maintaining their positions in galactic society. And the third is a militaristic culture that the Coalition keeps at arm's length. Cassie's fingers tightened on her stylus. The Talons were aggressive, sure, but calling humans barely functional was garbage. Earth had provided the majority of the Coalition's peacekeeping forces for 2 decades. Human engineers had designed the faster-than-light communications network that held the entire alliance together. Rollin assigned the homework with a wave of his hand. The details appeared on every student's data pad simultaneously. I want 3,000 words on why herbivorous civilizations dominate galactic society. Use the provided reading list. Due next Monday. The class began packing up. Cassie shoved her pad into her bag with more force than necessary. Playing to his ego won't kill you, her friend Owen muttered as they filed toward the exit. It might, Cassie said. I'm close. They walked across campus toward the dining hall. Terra Nova University sprawled across a plateau, with buildings designed to accommodate dozens of species. The architecture was human, but the modifications made it feel like a strange hybrid of styles. Owen grabbed a tray and started loading it with food. Cassie went for the vegetarian option purely out of spite. If Rollin thought eating plants made you superior, she would prove you could do it without being insufferable. I'm heading out this weekend, Owen said around a mouthful of rice. Hunting trip with Beth, Liam, and Garrett. Want to come? Can't. I have that chemistry lab report due. Your loss. Preserve opens for deer season Friday. Cassie had gone hunting exactly once, with her uncle when she was 14. She had cried after he shot the buck, then felt stupid for crying when he explained the population management program. Then she had helped him process the meat and felt weirdly proud of herself. It was complicated. Bring me back jerky, she said. Deal. A shadow fell across their table. Professor Rollins stood there, holding a tray loaded with various fruits and vegetables arranged in a pattern that probably meant something to Verdantians. I could not help but overhear, Rollins said, looking at Owen. You are going hunting? Owen nodded slowly. Yes, sir. Wilderness Preserve about 2 hours north. Fascinating. Rollins' tone suggested it was anything but. I assume you will use modern technology? Drones, perhaps? Automated tracking systems? No, sir. Tech is restricted in the preserve. Bows only. Traditional methods. Rollins' expression shifted to something like pity. How quaint. Playing caveman for the weekend. I suppose some humans enjoy pretending their species has not evolved beyond such necessities. Owen's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice level. It's not pretending, Professor. It's practice. Practice for what? Do you expect Earth to lose its agricultural infrastructure? No, but the skills matter anyway. Rollin laughed, a sound like wind through leaves. Skills. Yes, I am sure your ability to kill animals with primitive weapons will serve you well in your biology career. He walked away before Owen could respond. Cassie watched her friend's knuckles go white around his fork. Don't, she said quietly. He's not worth it. I know. But Owen's eyes followed Rollin across the dining hall, and Cassie recognized that look. She had seen it on her uncle's face when he was tracking something through the woods. Patient, focused, waiting for the right moment. Rollin had no idea what he had just poked, and Cassie found herself very much looking forward to Monday. The transport shuttle touched down at the edge of Fletcher's Wilderness Preserve just after dawn on Saturday. Owen stepped out first, breathing in air that smelled like pine and morning dew. Behind him, Beth, Liam, and Garrett unloaded gear from the cargo bay. And behind them, looking distinctly uncomfortable, Professor Rollin emerged wearing borrowed outdoor clothes that fit him poorly. Owen still could not believe the professor had actually asked to come along. Thursday afternoon, Rollin had appeared at his dorm room with a proposition. He wanted to observe the hunt for research purposes, document the inefficiency of traditional methods, maybe write a paper about it. Beth had laughed when Owen told her. Let him come. Should be educational. Now Rollins stood at the tree line, staring at the forest like it might bite him. The preserve covers about 40 square miles. Owen explained, slinging his bow across his back. Deer population is maintained between 800 and 1,000. We harvest about 50 each season to keep the ecosystem balanced. You make it sound scientific, Rollin observed. It is scientific. Game wardens monitor health, genetics, migration patterns. This is not just shooting animals randomly. Garrett handed out water bottles and trail markers. We will split into 2 groups. Owen and Beth go north, Liam and I go east. We meet back here at sunset or earlier if someone gets a deer. And where shall I go? Rollin asked. With me and Beth, Owen said. Try to keep up. They moved into the forest quietly. Beth took point, reading the ground for tracks. Owen followed, watching the spaces between trees. Rollin trailed behind, making enough noise to scare off anything within 100 yards. After 20 minutes, Beth raised a fist. Everyone stopped. She pointed at the ground where fresh deer tracks crossed a game trail. 3 animals probably does moving east toward water. She looked at Owen and gestured left. He nodded. They moved without speaking. Rollin opened his mouth to ask a question, and Beth shot him a look that could have frozen hydrogen. He closed his mouth. The tracking took 2 hours. Not chasing, just following the signs. A broken branch here. Disturbed leaves there. Beth moved like water, flowing around obstacles. Owen kept the mental map in his head, predicting where the deer would go based on terrain and wind direction. Rollin, to his credit, stayed quiet after the first hour. Owen caught him watching how Beth read the forest, how she could tell the difference between a track from this morning and one from yesterday. The professor's expression had shifted from smugness to concentration. They found the deer at a creek bed. 3 does, exactly as Beth had predicted, drinking from the slow water. Owen and Beth crouched behind a fallen log. Rollin crouched beside them, his breathing too loud. Owen pulled an arrow for his quiver and knocked it. The bow was composite recurve, handmade by his grandfather. No sights, no stabiloses, just wood and string and 60 pounds of draw weight that his shoulders had learned to handle over years of practice. He drew slowly, finding his anchor point. 40 yards to the nearest dell. Light wind from the east, barely a factor. The animal lifted its head, sensing something wrong, but not knowing what. Owen released. The arrow flew clean, punching through both lungs. The doe took 3 steps and collapsed. The other 2 bolted into the forest, vanishing in seconds. Beth was already moving forward, knife ready. Owen followed. Rollin stayed by the log, his green skin paler than usual. That was not luck, Rollin said quietly. No, Owen agreed. It was not. They field-dressed the deer by the creek. Beth made the first cuts with practiced efficiency, teaching Owen the method her grandmother had taught her. Blood, organs, careful separation of edible from waste. Rollin watched from a distance, transfixed and disturbed in equal measure. Every part gets used. Beth explained, not looking at Rollin, but clearly speaking for his benefit. Meat for eating, hide for leather, bones for tools or fertilizer, organs for bait or pet food. We waste nothing. It seems excessive for one meal, Rollin said. This is not one meal. This is 60 pounds of meat. That feeds my family for 2 months. Cost per pound is about 90 cents once we process it. Store beef costs $8. Owen helped her wrap the quarters in game bags. They would hang the meat at the preserves processing station, let it age for a week, then butcher it properly. That night, they made camp near the shuttle. Garrett and Liam had gotten a deer too, a young buck. They sat around a small fire, cooking backstrap on a portable grill. The smell made Owen's stomach growl. Rollin ate his own food, some kind of grain mixture that he had brought. He kept staring at the humans as they ate. You do not feel guilt? He asked finally. Beth looked up. About what? Killing the animal. I feel responsibility, she said. That is different. The deer died quickly because I practiced until I could ensure that. We use everything because we respect the sacrifice. But guilt? No. This is what we are. Predators, Rollins said. Omnivores. Owen corrected. We can choose. That is the point. We choose to hunt, but we do not have to. We choose to use traditional methods, but we have modern ones. The choice is what makes us human. Rollins stirred his grain slowly. On Verdantia, we eliminated meat consumption 3,000 years ago. We consider it a moral achievement. Good for you, Garrett said, not unkindly. But you are not us. Your morals do not have to be ours. Even if yours are violent. Killing for food is not violence, Beth said. It is survival. Violence is killing for no reason or for cruelty. We do not do that. Liam poked the fire. My dad is a soldier. He has killed people. That weighed on him for years. But he never lost sleep over deer season. There's a difference between feeding yourself and warfare. Rollin considered this. You draw a line between them. We draw lots of lines. That is what civilization is. Knowing where the lines are and choosing to stay on the right side. The fire crackled. Somewhere in the distance, an owl called. Rollin looked at the 4 humans around the flames, their faces orange in the firelight, their hands stained from the day's work. I think I do not understand humans as well as I thought, he said finally. Owen handed him a clean plate. Most aliens do not. That is okay. We're still figuring ourselves out too. They sat in silence for a while. The stars came out, brighter than they ever were near the city. Rollin kept watching the humans, seeing something he had missed before. They were not playing at being primitive. They were choosing to remember what they had been, what they still were under the cities and universities and starships. and the choice, Rollin was beginning to realize, was the most dangerous thing about them. Sunday evening arrived cool and clear. Owen pulled his truck into the university workshop loading bay, the bed loaded with coolers containing the aged venison. Rollin had ridden back with them in uncomfortable silence, watching the landscape roll past with new eyes. "You are welcome to observe," Owen said as he unlocked the workshop door. "But if blood makes you uncomfortable, now is the time to leave." Rollin straightened his shoulders. "I'm a scientist. I can handle biological processes." The workshop was designed for students who needed hands-on fabrication space. 3D printers lined one wall, woodworking tools another, and in the back corner sat several stainless steel tables used for everything from robotics assembly to what Owen was about to do. He laid out the quarters on the clean surface, then unpacked his knives. Each blade had a specific purpose, sharpened to an edge that could split hairs. Beside the knives, he set cutting boards, butcher paper, a scale, and labels. Beth arrived 20 minutes later with her own deer. Garrett showed up with vacuum sealer bags and his grandfather's meat grinder. Soon the workshop hummed with quiet activity. Rollin stood against the wall, data pad ready, watching. Owen started with the shoulder. The first cuts separated muscle groups along natural seams. No hacking, no sawing through bone. Just patient knife work that followed the anatomy of the animal. Roast came away clean. Smaller pieces for stew meat. Trim for grinding. "You have done this before," Rollin observed. "Since I was 12. My grandfather taught me. His father taught him. Goes back generations. Tradition. Knowledge," Owen corrected. "If supply chains fail, if the colony ships break down, if anything goes wrong, I can feed myself. That matters." Beth worked on her deer with the same practiced efficiency. She moved faster than Owen, her knife dancing through the meat with decades of muscle memory behind it. Her grandmother had been a butcher on Europa Station before retiring to Earth. "The hide," Rollins said, pointing at the deerskin Beth had brought. "What happens to that?" "Tanning," Beth said without looking up. "So I'll cure it first, then treat it with tannins from oak bark. Takes about 3 months to do it right. By December, I will have leather for gloves, maybe a small bag. You could simply buy leather. I could, but then I would not know exactly where it came from or how it was made. This way I know. The deer gave its life. The least I can do is honor that by using everything." Garrett set up the grinder and started processing trim. The machine whirred steadily, turning irregular chunks into ground meat that they would mix with fat and seasonings. Some would become burgers. Some would become sausage. None would be wasted. The door opened and a young woman entered. She was small, maybe 5 feet tall, with black hair tied back and eyes that took in the scene without judgment. Professor Way's graduate assistant, though Owen could not remember her name. "Making good use of the space, I see," she said. "Sorry if we are in your way," Owen replied. "Not at all. My grandmother's people used every part of the buffalo. It is good to see the practice continues." She walked over to examine Beth's tanning setup. "Are you using brain tanning or commercial solution?" "Commercial for now. I want to try brain tanning next time, but I have not learned the technique yet. I can teach you. The old method makes softer leather." Rollin listened to them discuss tanning chemistry with the same ease that they might discuss quantum physics. The graduate assistant mentioned her tribe's traditional smoking techniques. Beth asked questions. Owen added observations from his grandfather's methods. Knowledge flowed between them like water. "This is cultural," Rollins said suddenly. "This is not just food acquisition. This is identity." The graduate assistant looked at him. "Of course it is. Humans have hunted for 200,000 years. We stopped needing to hunt about 10,000 years ago. But need and identity are different things." "I do not understand." She picked up one of Owen's finished roasts, weighing it in her hand. "My people lived on the plains. We followed the herds. Hunting was not just how we ate. It was how we understood the world, how we connected to the land, how we measured ourselves. When the buffalo were nearly gone, we nearly disappeared too. Not from starvation, but from losing our purpose. But you have new purposes now. Science, art, space exploration. Yes. And we bring our old purposes with us. They make us better at the new ones." She set the roast down gently. A good hunter is patient, observant, respectful. Those qualities help in research, too. Owen finished separating the backstrap and held it up for Roland to see. This is the tenderloin. Most valuable cut. About 3 pounds of the best meat on the animal. He set aside carefully. My grandfather always said you can judge a hunter by how they treat the backstrap. Respect the animal by not wasting the gift. Roland moved closer, examining the organized piles of meat. Roasts labeled and weighed. Stew meats sorted by size. Trim ready for grinding. The bones set aside for stock. Even the fat being collected for rendering into tallow. The efficiency is remarkable, he admitted. That is what you miss in your lectures, the graduate assistant said. You see meat eating as inefficient compared to herbivory, but you measure the wrong efficiency. You look at resource conversion and miss skill development, cultural knowledge, community bonding. She gestured at the 3 students working in harmony. They are not just making food. They are practicing coordination, teaching each other, maintaining traditions, building self-reliance. Those skills echo in everything else they do. Roland was quiet for a long moment. Then he asked, "How many humans know these skills?" "Hard to say," Owen answered. "Hunting licenses on Earth number about 50 million. But plenty of people fish or forage or keep chickens. I would guess maybe 20% of humans maintain some kind of traditional food acquisition skill. 20% of 8 billion. 1.6 billion people who know how to feed themselves without a supply chain," Beth said. "Not counting the colony worlds, where the percentage is higher." Garrett started packaging the ground meat into 1-pound portions. "My family came from Korea 4 generations back. We do not hunt, but my grandmother still makes kimchi every fall. Same principle. Knowledge that does not depend on the grid staying up." Roland watched them work for another hour. The workshop filled with neat packages of meat, each labeled with cut type and date. Beth's hide hung from a rack, dripping brine into a collection tray. The bone sat in a stock pot, ready to be transported to someone's kitchen for soup. Finally, Owen sealed the last package and cleaned his knives. "Want to try some? I can cook a bit of backstrap right now." "I cannot digest meat," Rollins said. "Right? Salty, but I appreciate the offer." The professor looked at his data pad, filled with notes. "I think I need to revise my lecture." "The one calling us primitive?" Beth asked. "The one where I did not understand what I was looking at." He headed for the door, then paused. "Thank you for allowing me to observe." It was educational. After he left, the 3 students exchanged glances. "Think he actually learned something?" Garrett asked. Owen wiped down the table. "Maybe. Or maybe he will write a paper about how quaint we are." But somehow, watching Rollins' face as he studied their work, Owen suspected the professor had seen something that complicated his neat theories about dietary evolution and civilized behavior. And complications, Owen knew from tracking deer, were where the interesting discoveries happened. Tuesday night brought the monthly faculty dinner, held in the university's formal dining hall. Rollin attended out of obligation, still processing what he had witnessed over the weekend. He found himself seated between Professor Way from evolutionary biology and Dr. Hayes from the history department. The meal was vegetarian by default, accommodating the various dietary restrictions of a mixed-species faculty. Rollin picked at a salad while conversations flowed around him. "How was your weekend, Rollin?" Way asked pleasantly. "Educational. I accompanied some students on a hunting trip." Hayes looked up from her soup. "Really? I would not have pegged you for the outdoor type. I went as an observer." "For research. And what did you learn?" Way's tone was carefully neutral, but Rollin caught the hint of amusement. "That I may have underestimated the complexity of traditional food acquisition." Rollin set down his fork. The students displayed remarkable skill. Tracking, processing, resource utilization. It was far more sophisticated than I expected. "Of course it was," Hayes said. "Humans hunted for most of our existence. We got very good at it, but you were a literature professor. Surely you do not hunt." Hayes smiled. "I ice fish every winter with my daughters. We spent a week in my parents' cabin in Minnesota. Catch pike and walleye through holes in the lake ice." Rollins stared at her. Hayes was soft-spoken, gentle, spent her days analyzing poetry. The image of her sitting on frozen water waiting for fish did not compute. It is a family tradition, she continued. My father taught me when I was 6. I taught my daughters when they were 8 and 10. We sit in the cold, drink hot chocolate, talk about everything and nothing. Last year, we caught 40 pounds of fish. Do you need the fish? For survival. No, but I need the time with my daughters. I need the quiet. I need to remember that I can provide for myself if necessary. She shrugged. Plus, fish tastes better when you catch it yourself. Professor Wei cut into his tofu. Rollin, may I ask you something? How many Verdantians maintain traditional plant cultivation knowledge? Growing food rather than purchasing it? Very few. We have industrial agriculture. Individual cultivation is unnecessary. And if that system failed, it will not. We have redundancies. But if it did, Rollin considered, I suppose we would struggle initially, but we would adapt. Humans plan not to struggle, Wei said. We maintain the old knowledge alongside the new. My grandfather grew vegetables. My mother canned preserves. I keep chickens in my backyard, not because I must, but because I can. Dr. Park from the mathematics department joined the conversation. I forage for mushrooms. There are safe, edible species in the forests around here. Chanterelles, morels, chicken of the woods. I learned from a field guide and local experts. I grow herbs, added the physics professor, a woman named Rodriguez. Started during my postdoc when I was broke. Now I do it because I enjoy it. Fresh basil tastes different than store-bought. Rollin looked around the table. 9 human professors, all with stories of growing, catching, hunting, or gathering food. All with knowledge that technically served no purpose in their modern lives. Why maintain these skills? He asked. You are scientists, educators. You have moved beyond subsistence living. Wei set down his utensils. Have we? Or have we simply added new capabilities without discarding the old ones? He leaned forward. Let me tell you about persistence hunting, Rollin. Before we had bows or spears, humans hunted by simply following prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. We are not fast, but we are relentless. We can run all day in heat that would kill most predators. I have read about this. Good. Then you know it required incredible endurance, tracking ability, and cooperation. Groups of hunters working together, reading signs, communicating over distances, predicting animal behavior. Wei smiled. Now think about how humans approach research. Long projects, massive collaboration, following tiny clues to eventual breakthroughs. We bring the same mentality to science that we brought to hunting. Rollin started to object, then stopped. He had watched Owen and Beth track those deer with exactly that kind of patient determination. Hayes added her own observation. Hunting also shaped our language development. You need communication for coordinated hunts. You need abstract thinking to plan strategies. You need theory of mind to predict what the prey will do. Many species have language without hunting, Rollin countered. True, but human language has particular features. We love metaphors, analogies, storytelling. We explain new things by comparing them to familiar things. That comes from teaching complex skills across generations. She gestured with her glass. Every culture on Earth has hunting stories. They teach skills, values, caution, respect. The stories kept the knowledge alive. Park nodded. And the mathematics of trajectory, wind compensation, distance estimation. Children learn these intuitively through practice. Then when they study physics or engineering, the concepts are already familiar. You make it sound like hunting built human civilization, Rollins said. Not built, Wei corrected. Shaped. We are not civilized despite being predators. We are civilized in the way we are because we were predators. He paused. Tell me, why do humans dominate coalition peacekeeping forces? Because you are willing to fight. Because we are good at it. Because we spent hundreds of thousands of years learning to coordinate, to track, to plan, to adapt. Those skills transfer. A soldier and a hunter use very similar cognitive processes. Rollin felt uncomfortable. You are suggesting humans are inherently violent. I am suggesting humans are inherently capable of directed violence when necessary. There is a difference. Wei's expression was serious. We learned to hunt in groups. That meant learning to kill efficiently while minimizing risk to ourselves. We got very good at both parts, the killing and the protecting. Rodriguez spoke up. I read your lecture notes, Rollin. The one about herbivorous civilizations being superior. You argued that meat consumption made species more aggressive. The data supports this. Does it? Or does the data show that omnivorous species are more comfortable with conflict when necessary? She pulled up her data pad and displayed a chart. Coalition Peacekeeping Effectiveness Rating. Top 5 species. Humans, the Kresh, the Talons, the Quillians, and the Rel. 3 omnivores and 2 herbivores. But look at casualty rates. Rollins studied the numbers. Human peacekeepers had the lowest casualty rate despite taking the most dangerous assignments. We do not charge in recklessly, Rodriguez explained. We plan. We coordinate. We minimize risk. Hunting taught us that. The deer does not care about your courage. It cares about your skill. The dinner continued, but Rollin barely tasted his food. His mind churned through implications. After the meal, he returned to his office and started searching through databases, human military history, tactical development, strategic thinking. The patterns were there once he looked for them. Humans who grew up hunting adapted to military training faster. Not because they were bloodthirsty, but because the cognitive framework was already in place that he found studies on problem solving. Human researchers who maintained traditional skills showed higher adaptability in novel situations. The connection was not direct, but it was there. Keeping one foot in the ancestral past seemed to make humans better at navigating the technological present. Rollins stared at his notes until late into the night. He had built a career on the assumption that moving beyond predation was a mark of advancement, that herbivorous species represented the future while omnivores were stuck in the past. But what if he had it backwards? What if humans were not civilized despite their predatory nature, but because they had learned to direct those instincts toward cooperation and protection rather than conquest? The question troubled him because he could not dismiss it. Not after watching Owen's hands work through that deer with the same careful precision Rollin had seen him use in the laboratory. Not after learning that half the faculty maintained skills their species had been perfecting for longer than Verdantian civilization had existed. Humans had not abandoned predation to become civilized. They had brought it with them, refined it, turned it into something both beautiful and terrifying. And Rollin was starting to suspect that this made them far more dangerous than he had ever imagined. The emergency alert came through at 2 in the afternoon on Thursday. Cassie was in the library when her data pad buzzed with a campus-wide notification. Security lockdown. Shelter in place. Do not leave buildings. The message did not explain why, which made it worse. Students looked at each other nervously. A few pulled out phones to call friends. The library staff started ushering people away from windows. Cassie found herself being directed to a study room on the 3rd floor. Other students crowded in. Someone turned on the news feed. Escaped specimen from Xenobiology Research Facility. Species, Talarian stalker. Danger level, extreme. Do not approach. Oh hell, someone muttered. Cassie knew about Talarian stalkers. They were one of the few species that made humans look friendly. 8-legged ambush predators from a high-gravity world. Fast, smart, and equipped with venom that could drop a person in seconds. Professor Wei kept one in a research lab for behavioral studies, but it was supposed to be in a reinforced containment unit. The study room door opened and Professor Rollins slipped in, looking shaken. He saw Cassie and moved to sit beside her. Your Professor Wei's specimen escaped, he said quietly. Someone left the maintenance hatch unsecured. Is anyone hurt? Not yet, but the creature is loose somewhere on campus. Security is attempting non-lethal containment, but it is a protected research animal. They cannot kill it. Through the window, Cassie could see the quad below. Security personnel in body armor moved in coordinated patterns, holding what looked like net launchers and shock prods. They moved carefully, checking corners, watching roof lines. Then she saw something else. Students, maybe a dozen of them, spread out across the quad in a pattern that looked random but was not. They were not running or hiding. They were watching. Waiting. What are those idiots doing? Rollin hissed. Cassie recognized Owen among them. Beth was there too, along with Garrett and several others from their outdoor club. They had spread out to cover the open ground, positioning themselves near potential escape routes. The stalker appeared on top of the student union building. It was the size of a large dog, sleek and dark, moving on 8 legs that could grip any surface. Campus security spotted it and started moving forward with their nets. The creature was faster. It bounded across the roof and leaped to a lower building, heading for the forest at the campus edge. If it reached the trees, they would never find it. Owen moved first. He did not run at the stalker. He ran to cut off its escape route, angling to position himself between the creature and the forest. Beth mirrored him from the other side. Garrett moved to cover the open flank. "They are hurting it," Rollins said, wonder in his voice. "They are hunting it." Cassie watched as the pattern became clear. The students moved without speaking, without gesturing, reading each other's positions and adjusting accordingly. They were not trying to catch the stalker. They were guiding it, pushing it toward the open quad where security could deploy their nets. The stalker tried to dodge left. A student shifted to block. It tried right. Another student was already there. Not close enough to threaten, just close enough to redirect. The creature was being funneled without realizing it. One of the security officers raised his net launcher. The stalker saw it and tried to reverse direction. Owen was there, not attacking, just standing in the way. The creature hissed and backed up, straight into the firing zone, the net deployed with a soft whomp. The stalker went down tangled in carbon fiber mesh. Security rushed forward with the containment crate while the students backed off, giving the professionals room to work. Cassie let out a breath she had not known she was holding. 20 minutes later, the lockdown lifted. Cassie found Owen in the hallway outside the library. He looked calm, almost bored. "That was insane," she said. "That was necessary. Security was going to chase it into the woods. You could have been killed." Owen shrugged. "It was not trying to hunt us. It was trying to escape. We just made sure it escaped in the right direction." Rollin emerged from the study room. He looked at Owen with an expression Cassie could not read. "How did you coordinate?" the professor asked. "I saw no communication. Did not need it. We all knew what we were doing." "But you have never hunted a Talarian stalker before." "No, but I have herded deer, and Beth has driven wild pigs, and Garrett has worked cattle. Same principle. Position yourself to influence movement. Make the prey think it is choosing its path while you control the options. You make it sound simple. It is simple. Most predator skills are. The hard part is staying calm and trusting your team." Owen glanced back at the quad. Security did the actual capture. We just set it up for them. The security chief arrived then, a woman named Richards who had retired from the Colonial Marines before taking the campus job. She looked at Owen and the other students with a mix of exasperation and approval. "That was either the smartest or dumbest thing I have seen students do," she said. "Going to go with smart since it worked. Where did you learn to move like that?" "Hunting," Owen said simply. Richards nodded slowly. "Figures. Marines do similar drills. Good instincts." She paused. "Also, do not do it again. You are students, not security personnel." "Yes, ma'am." After Richards left, Rollins stood very still in the hallway. Students flowed around him, chattering about the excitement. The professor watched Owen walk away, talking easily with Beth about something unrelated to their near-death experience. Cassie approached him. "You look like you have seen a ghost." "Not a ghost. A revelation." Rollin turned to her. They did not learn that today. That coordination, that calm under pressure. It was already there, built into them. We are pretty good in emergencies. It is more than that. He gestured at the quad, now empty and peaceful. Your species spent hundreds of thousands of years as both predator and prey. You learned to hunt in packs and defend against pack hunters. Those instincts do not disappear because you built cities and starships. Is that bad? Rollin considered the question. I thought it was. I thought it meant humans were stuck in an evolutionary cul-de-sac. Violent, primitive, unable to transcend your base nature. And now I think maybe you transcended it in a different way than I understood. You did not abandon the predator. You civilized it, taught it to protect instead of just hunt, to coordinate instead of just compete. He looked at Cassie. Your friend Owen could have killed that stalker. He is strong enough, smart enough, but he chose to guide it to safety instead. That is not weakness. That is restraint. And restraint is only meaningful when you actually have the capacity for violence. Cassie thought about that. So we are dangerous because we choose not to be. You're dangerous because you can choose. Because you have the capability, but not the compulsion. Rollins started walking toward his office. I need to revise my lecture again. Possibly my entire research focus. What are you going to tell your students? He paused at the stairwell. The truth. That I was wrong. That herbivorous species are not superior, just different. That humans brought their predatory heritage into civilization and made something unique out of it. Something the galaxy needs, even if we do not always want to admit it. Cassie watched him go. Then she headed down to the quad where Owen and the others were retelling the story to a growing crowd of students. They were laughing now, adrenaline wearing off, but Cassie had seen their faces during the hunt. Calm, focused, ancient. And she understood what had frightened Rollin so badly. Not that humans were predators, but that they were predators who had learned to pretend to be prey until the moment action was required. Then they remembered exactly what they were. Monday morning arrived cold and bright. Students filed into the lecture hall with their usual Monday reluctance, clutching coffee and trying to shake off the weekend. Cassie took her seat in the third row, curious about what Rollin would say after the events of the previous week. The professor stood at the front of the room, but his posture was different, less rigid, more uncertain. He waited for everyone to settle before speaking. I owe you an apology, he began. The room went silent. Students looked at each other, confused. Professors did not apologize. 3 weeks ago, I delivered a lecture on dietary evolution. I argued that herbivorous species were superior, that omnivorous diets represented an evolutionary compromise, and that humanity's continued meat consumption was a sign of primitive thinking. He paused. I was wrong. Someone dropped a stylus. It clattered loudly in the quiet room. I spent this past week observing human food acquisition practices. I accompanied students on a hunting trip. I watched them process the catch. I listened to faculty members discuss their own traditional knowledge. Rollin pulled up a new presentation on the holographic display. What I learned changed my understanding of dietary evolution and its relationship to civilization development. The first image showed various predators and omnivores across multiple worlds. Humans, the Kresh, the Talons, several others. I previously dismissed these species as outliers, evolutionary dead ends that somehow stumbled into spaceflight despite their violent natures. He looked directly at the human students. This was academic arrogance. I saw complexity and dismissed it as simple because it did not match my theoretical framework. He advanced to the next slide, showing brain scans of different species. Hunting shapes neurology in specific ways. It requires spatial reasoning, predictive modeling, coordination, communication, and risk assessment. These are not primitive skills. They are the foundation of advanced cognition. A student raised his hand. But herbivores have those skills too. Yes, but they developed them differently. Herbivorous species like mine learn to predict plant growth cycles, identify beneficial crops, coordinate large-scale agriculture. Our intelligence evolved from cultivation. He gestured at the human brain scan. Human intelligence evolved from pursuit, from tracking, from understanding prey behavior and coordinating with hunting partners. Owen sat near the back, listening quietly. Rollin noticed him and continued. This creates different cognitive patterns. Herbivorous species excel at long-term planning, sustainable resource management, and hierarchical organization. We build stable civilizations efficiently. He paused. But humans excel at adaptation, improvisation, and coordinated response to immediate threats. You build resilient civilizations. The next slide showed coalition peacekeeping statistics. I previously could not understand why omnivorous species dominated security and defense roles. I thought it was because you were more violent. I missed the actual reason. Cassie found herself leaning forward. You are better at it, Rollins said simply. Better at assessing threats, coordinating responses, making rapid tactical decisions. These are hunting skills applied to protection rather than predation. The underlying neurology is the same. The application is civilized. He showed images from the stalker incident. Security footage of students moving in coordinated patterns, hurting the dangerous creature without communication. None of these students had trained together for this specific scenario. Yet they executed a complex maneuver with no verbal coordination. They simply understood each other's intentions and adapted accordingly. He looked at Owen again. When I asked how you did it, you said it was simple. You were wrong. It was instinctive. That is far more impressive. A Verdantine exchange student raised her hand. Are you saying predatory species are superior? No, I am saying different evolutionary paths create different strengths. Herbivorous species are not inferior to omnivores. We are differently capable. He smiled slightly. My species has maintained stable governance for 12,000 years. We have eliminated war, poverty, and resource scarcity. These are achievements humans have not matched. Yet, someone muttered. A few students laughed. Perhaps, Rollin acknowledged. But you have achieved things we have not. You maintain traditional knowledge alongside advanced technology. You preserve ancestral skills while developing new ones. You balance the predatory heritage with civilized behavior in ways that frankly terrify other species. The room was completely silent now. Let me be clear about something, Rollins said, his voice serious. Humans are dangerous. Not because you are violent by nature, but because you are capable of violence by choice. You can hunt, track, kill efficiently, but you choose not to accept when necessary. That restraint is what makes you civilized, but the capability is what makes you effective. He pulled up a final image showing human peacekeepers working with refugees on a war-torn colony world. You protect others because you understand what predation looks like, because you know how to hunt, you know how to stop hunters, because you have learned restraint, you can teach it. And because you remember what you are capable of, you can be trusted to use that capability wisely. Cassie felt something shift in her understanding. Rollin was not just correcting a lecture. He was admitting that his entire framework had been flawed. So what does this mean for the assignment? Someone asked. The assignment is canceled. Instead, I want you to write about the relationship between dietary evolution and cognitive development in your own lives. If you hunt, fish, garden, or forage, describe what skills you develop through that practice and how they apply to other areas of your life. If you do not maintain traditional food acquisition skills, interview someone who does. 3,000 words. Due in 2 weeks. Students started talking among themselves. Rollin waited for quiet, then added one more thing. I also want to address a statement I made earlier in the semester. I said humans were barely maintaining their position in galactic society. That was incorrect. Humans are not maintaining anything. You are expanding, adapting, and integrating into coalition culture while maintaining your own identity. That is not weakness. That is strength. Class ended early. Students filed out, talking excitedly about the assignment. Cassie waited until most had left before approaching the front. That was brave, she said to Rollin. That was necessary. I teach future xenobiologists. If I fill their heads with my own biases, I do them a disservice. Owen appeared beside Cassie. He held a small package wrapped in butcher paper. For you, Professor. Rollin opened it carefully. Inside was a pound of venison jerky, professionally packaged. I cannot eat this, Rollins said quietly. I know, but you can understand what it represents. Skill, tradition, and the choice to share resources with others. Owen smiled. You could also give it to Professor Way. He likes jerky. Rollin held the package like it was precious. Thank you for this and for your patience with my ignorance. You are not ignorant. You just had limited data. That is what research is for. Correcting assumptions when you get new information. After Owen and Cassie left, Rollins sat alone in the empty lecture hall. He thought about Verdantia, his home world, where hunting had been eliminated millennia ago, where the predators had been removed or relocated to preserves. where violence was so rare that most citizens went their entire lives without witnessing it was peaceful, safe, civilized. But it was also fragile in ways the species did not like to acknowledge. If their systems failed, how many Verdantians could feed themselves? How many would know how to coordinate in a crisis without technological assistance? How many could protect others if protection was needed? Humans carried those capabilities with them always. Not because they expected civilization to fail, but because they understood that civilization was a choice that required constant maintenance. And maintaining it meant remembering what came before it. Rollin pulled up his personal notes and began writing. Not a research paper, a letter to his colleagues on Verdantia, a warning and an observation. Humanity was not a species that had transcended predation through moral superiority. They were predators who had chosen to build something better while keeping the predator close enough to remember. They were dangerous not in spite of their civilization, but because their civilization was built on a foundation of controlled capability. And the galaxy, Rollin wrote, needed to understand that difference. Because humans would protect you fiercely, work with you patiently, and share with you generously. But if you mistook their gentleness for weakness, you would discover exactly how much violence they had chosen not to use. That choice was the most civilized thing about them. And the most terrifying that he sent the letter and packed his things. Tomorrow he would redesign his entire curriculum. Tonight, he would think about what it meant to build a civilization on top of instincts rather than in spite of them. And he would be grateful that humans had chosen to be allies.